It's real now, he said. It's real now. Brilliant. Here, yes, here, let me just check. If you could introduce yourself, give us your name, your age, and an interesting fact about yourself. And honesty in your age, it's church, okay?
So what,
Name,
age.
and an interesting fact.
Oh, right, okay. So I'm Ian McVicker. As JT's already introduced me, I'm thinking coming 46, right? Next Monday. No, last Monday, but next Monday. And I'm a massive Liverpool and Rangers fan, which explains the hairline.
Brilliant. We'll pray for you at the end. Couple quick fires, and you can play along a wee bit, just so everyone's at home feels like we're at the sofa listening. Coke or Pepsi?
Match a Dr. Pepper, man. Sorry.
Interesting.
So,
it's not on the question, but here, sure, it's okay.
If I had to pick
Yeah,
out
they
them
got
two,
that.
the
Okay,
Coke,
yeah.
obviously.
Coffee or tea?
Definitely coffee.
Good job. If you had a superpower, like any superpower in the world, what would it be?
Invisibility.
Oh. I won't ask why. I'll just leave that up to
many
imagination.
reasons, many reasons.
Yeah. What's something that people would be surprised to learn about you?
This mean mug, isn't he? Just always that unapproachable. I'm actually quite dead on whenever you approach me. Like it's so I'm not scary as I look sometimes.
You're not scary as you look. I like that. And lastly, if you had to wear an everyday smell as an aftershave, what would it be?
Paco Rabanne Black XS.
Say it again.
Paco Rabanne Black XS.
Okay. Paco Rabanne S.
Black XS.
There you go, ladies. If you want to buy some Christmas presents, there you go. If you want to smell like Ian McVicker, brilliant. Here we're going to get into why we're here tonight. First question for us is this: give us an insight into the early years of Ian. What was it like growing up? What things happened in your early early? What am I looking for? Childhood. What happened in your early childhood that shaped you to be the guy you are today?
You're supposed to put me ease up here, so you're.
I'm just trying to take all the blame. Don't worry, bro.
Right. Well, so obviously born to my mum and dad. Part of the first few months of my life, born and reared in Glebestide Estate. Still there to the day, although I'm in the posh end now. That's what we called it whenever we were younger and that. Born with a football at my feet, more or less, and boxing gloves in my hand. That was my two biggest passions growing up. Big, massive Mike Tyson fan, as I said, Liverpool and Rangers fan. Happy childhood, pretty decent. Played football nearly every day, but unfortunately had a real dark, sinister sort of streak to myself. And that's what I say, the people find out tonight, like things about me that they'd probably never heard before, even my mum and dad, even Mel and they'll find out things that maybe they didn't know about me. But so as a kid, growing up, I had a dark voice in my head. Really sinister, sort of like evil voice that sort of always pushed me. No, maybe in the very early years, but my first memory of it was I was in P1, and I was a fella, Stephen Castles. I was chasing my cousin Dean around the playground and that, and they were running around us. We were like, sort of gathered here, and they were running around us, and Stephen was trying to hit my cousin Dean, and I was like, I'm going to take him out here, do you know, sort of thing. So. But I was like, I'm going to let him build up his speed, because then the quicker he goes, it's going to be worse damage to him. So once they were up at full speed, I just stuck the foot out and I went down, scooped his face up the thing, and that there. And then whenever I knew it was like a sort of real sinister sort of side to myself, whenever I seen him in the classroom, so I sat and laughed at him because he had this big swollen face and that there. So, but again, it wasn't a really everyday sort of thing. It was one of them things that just sort of creeped in now and again. And then the older I got, it started creeping in even more in that there. But again, went about Glebhousing Estate playing football and that. And the young ones will maybe not know much about this here, but we grew up in the Troubles and that there. So every time you left the house, you didn't know if you were coming home again. And then obviously, growing up in the Loyalist housing estate, where mum and dad were quite into the sort of like Protestant culture and that there. We were on the band parades and that, and then it was massive in the Glebe and that there, bonfires and that, and then so really from a young age we were being groomed to be loyalists. And every month the UVF and UDA sold magazines within the estate and that there. One was a volunteer, one was a warrior. And then I started to read them, started getting infatuated with the sort of trouble side of thing. And then in March 1988, that's never my sort of life changed forever, so it was. Some of the older ones in the congregation will remember this here, but in March 1988, there's two soldiers, Derek Woods and I think it's David Howes, driving through Andersontown in Belfast, came across an IRA funeral and were trailed from the car and really getting it bad and killed in Andersontown that day and that, but it was all over the news. And we were sat and watching it I can still see them today, that the evil in the Republicans' eyes, it was an IRA funeral, you know, and the evil in their eyes and the damage they wanted to do. And then I started to read about it in the magazines and then that was like, so instead of my heroes becoming football players, which they were in the sort of early to mid 80s, my heroes started to become loyalists, you know, people like Billy Ray, Lenny Murphy and that there. I started to read loyalist books then from young age, so read The Shankle Butchers at 11 years of age, which isn't really like sort of reading that a young one should be reading, quite graphic, but part of our history. And then Michael Stone's Stone Cold, read that at 13 years of age. So these people started to become who I wanted to be. And then started getting into drinking, drugs, running with my mates and that there. And then almost 10 years to the date, by them two soldiers being killed, joined UDA myself, so that, and just sort of like a downhill spiral then for about 12, 13 years.
Okay, well, we're on that. So thank you for being so honest as well, Ian. So there's so many things in your life that I think that can probably a lot of this generation can resonate with, and maybe didn't make some of the decisions that you made, but we're on that path and had seen some of the things. And so you haven't always followed Jesus. You love Jesus today. So maybe take us on a bit of a journey of them 10 to 13 years of what it was like before you made a decision to follow Jesus. So
sort of around, I would say probably 13, whenever I went to high school. Obviously puberty messed up the whole sort of weirdness of my brain. Started getting fights all the time at school, loved it. Absolutely loved fighting. So I want to profess to be a hard man, but I know my way around a fight, like, and I was blessed with a pretty decent right hand, which, whether it's a blessing or a curse, but so I just loved it. I just loved being violent myself and that. I just loved fighting, loved the drinking culture, loved the drug culture at that time. I just kept getting into trouble and that there. But I was a really talented footballer as well. Probably should have been across the water, but the day that the scouts came to watch me in the cricket park, I got sent off that day because of my temper. But it was just there's certain things that was going on with this voice in my head and that there, which we now they come to realise we think it might be ADHD. So, but back then it was never a thing, and talking was never a thing. You were just man up, get on with it, put your head down. I'm not trying to blow me in trumpet here, but I'm really, really smart, but I just couldn't vocalise it, couldn't put it on the paper, and so that bore into frustration, which then bore into violence and fighting, and then, as I say, drinking and drugs and that there, and then just kept going in a downward spiral, ruined my football career, never got took to boxing and that there because it was at the chapel, obviously, so never got to really follow any of my passions in that there, so my passion then became the dark side, so to speak. So, and then right up until I was about 21, and this was where God actually did start working proper work, or I started to notice God working in my life, even though I didn't realise it back then. But whenever I was 21, I was working in that, and I put money away for a night out and that there. But the money got stole, which ended up being one of the brothers anyway. He took it to go out with his mates and play snooker in that area, but I just was really upset in that area. And I don't, like, that's what I say, didn't ask me, you asked her, but for the first time ever, my mum sort of went, right, okay, I'll give you the money to go out, but it wasn't enough. She didn't have enough to give me like, to go where I was meant to go. So the brothers started seeing his ex-wife in that area, and they were at a party in Korean, and it turned out to be my soulmate in there, 18th. So it was the 1st October, 2000, so it was, and met Melanie that night and clicked straight away. Moved really, really quick. moved in with each other really quick. Just spent nearly every week a minute with each other and that there, and then 9 months later, lo, big bundle of joy arrived and that there, which should have been probably the happiest day of my life. And it actually was the happiest day of my life, but it actually caused a spiral that for the next 9 years I put my family through the ringer, if you know what I mean. So all born, I was working in the model care home, and I'd done a 12-hour shift, and then we were so short-staffed, they'd asked me to stay on, and I stayed on and done our shift, so with no sleep. Corey wasn't the best of sleeper as a kid and that there, so he just kept getting up and that there, and so I went to bed and that, and I thought I'd only be sleeping 5 minutes, so I said to Melanie, you get up, or you stay there, I'll get up, and in the bathroom, and just passed out, blacked out, fell back onto the bath, and sort of bent the way you shouldn't have bent, so instead of bending that way, I bent that way. Was mangled in among the bath. Melanie, how she summoned the strength was, I stopped breathing, she pulled me out, put me in recovery position, brought me around, and I didn't remember any of it, but I just remember sort of coming out and her going, right, we had to get you to the hospital, and I was like, nope, no, we're just going back to bed and that there, and then I think it was 3 days later, the impact of the fall hit me. I was walking, I think we were walking somewhere, I can't remember where it was just past the spar, and the pain just seared right into my back, as if somebody had stabbed me in my machete right in the base of the spine. And I was in crippling pain, and I thought, oh, it's just a spasm and that there, but it turns out it ended up as a really severe back injury, which I just kept damaging because just kept playing football, kept working, kept doing whatever it was, just acting a leg a lot of times, but then started to self-medicate with alcohol. So that's where it sort of started to go downhill. I knew my football career, I was playing at quite a high standard at the time. I was playing at intermediate, as you know, was quite a tough standard back then. I was playing at that sort of level and that era, but it was just getting high. It was just everything, just that much pain. And I just couldn't wait to get back to the bar just to get a drink, just to numb the pain in that area. Didn't want to go home because then I had the pain of, you know, Melanie was suffering from severe postnatal depression. Corey just wasn't the best sleeper. So just the actual stresses of the word were just like too much for me to, which I didn't know at the time, probably ADHD. Just couldn't filter it, couldn't process it. And yeah, I just started to drink really, really, really heavily. And then I was going out and wasn't coming home. I was maybe going away for 2-3 nights at a time. And I don't know how, but she stuck with me through it and out there. So I was trying to brush her out for time's sake, or brush her a lot of things that happened for time's sake and that, but I was a horrible, horrible person to probably the two people that I should have loved the most, you know, Melanie and Corey. But I can only apologise now, but I'm working every day now to sort of make up for that, if you know what I mean. So, but I just Melanie held the house together and stuck by me through thick and thin. But I was a horrible, horrible person, and then I was just violent, trying to do as much damage. I think I was actually trying to get sent to jail, to be honest with you. I think because I thought if I go to jail, I'll get the help that I need without having to ask for it. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, so 9 years of like sheer hell for them too. So it was. So.
Thank you so much, Ian, again. And something I think comes across from Ian is that a lot of people in this sort of area of life can almost glamorize it and think it's something that is good, but your story is so raw, and you understand the failure that sometimes you chose to be, and some of the decisions that you made that weren't right. And so it's a really honest, humble way to look at it, and I think it's really kind that you can now look back at yourself and some of the decisions you've made, but also now reflect on it to choose, I want to do better. And I'm assuming that there's probably people in this space tonight who have made decisions that you regret, and maybe making decisions that you regret. And sometimes in their moments that I'm sure you could say, Ian, you feel like there's no way out of it. Like here, I can't get out of this. I can't ask for help. I can't do anything. But your story, which we'll hear in a second, is that moment where someone helped you out of it. And so on that journey, Ian, when was the first sort of encounter with Jesus? How did you go from being this guy that you have described to someone who loves Jesus?
Well, as I say, as much as I didn't treat her that way, Melanie was my security blanket, so her sticking around really, it did help to a certain extent. But as I say, wasn't all bad, obviously, but there was some good teams as well. 3 in among that, or very few, but there was. But then it actually happened in 2010. Every week I was like, I'm going out, but I'll be home, and that there. And Melanie had heard it that many times and that there, so it was Remembrance Sunday, and I went to the big UDA Remembrance Sunday parade up in Londonderry, and come home, and there was a big match on that afternoon, and I was like to Melanie, I was like, look, I'm going to go out, you know, for a couple of pints and that there with the lads and that there, and I'll be home for tea time and that there. I got to tea time, obviously again, never come home again. And then got to 7 o'clock, and I was like, should I go home now? And I was like, oh, do you know what? No, I'm going to stay out. I'm having a good time out there. And then I actually got chatting to a fella down the street that night. It was actually a relation and that. And we got in a quite a deep conversation. The next thing I knew, it was like 10 o'clock, and I was like, well, damage is done now. So I ended up staying out. And it wasn't even my worst. You know, I was back home, I think it was about 12, half 12, maybe 21. So I hadn't stayed away the whole night, like I usually would have done. But I just went to bed, woke up the next morning, and just the atmosphere in the house was different. I just knew Melanie was done. You just get this feeling. And I was sitting up the stairs, you know, people get the walk of shame that there. Well, I was sitting in my set of shame sort of thing. And this was true, Bill. I was just sitting, and I just heard God. And it's the loudest, scariest, most forthright voice I ever heard in my life. He just went, you need to stop now, or that's it, you're done. And obviously, I went down to Melanie, I was like, sorry, I'll never do it again. I mean it this time, promise you this time. And she was like, well, whatever. But somehow she still managed to stick around that day, and for the next week and that there. And then the next weekend I didn't drink. And then the next weekend after that, didn't drink again. Didn't even have the feelings that I wanted to drink. And then 3 weeks became a month became 3 months and that there, and I just wasn't getting this feeling that I wanted to drink. And I was like, wow, this is new sort of thing. I didn't want to be violent for the first time in a long time. I just was calm, just repairing my relationship with Melanie and that there, and then she started to learn to trust me again. And then so that day of 2010, I think it was the 15th of November, 16th of November, that was God's voice just rattled my cage more or less. I'm not scared of many things in life, but that really put the fear in me, if you know what I mean. So.
And from that moment, so that was 2010, when did you give your life to Jesus? When was the moment you sort of bowed and say, Lord, I want you to take all of my life?
So anybody that knows me really well knows I'm a real stubborn, thran sort of person. And I do apologise to anybody. I haven't got a telephone voice. I'm Ballymoney Ulster Scotch. And so if you didn't pick up everything, maybe pause it and life it up. But I was thran, stubborn, and I still wasn't like. I still had the grounding for like young age whenever we went to 3P and that there. So I still knew bits and pieces and that there, but. Me and Melanie were obviously trying for another kid and that there, and then we were having trouble in that there, so I got tested. I was Maryland fine, as they say, so I was above the national average, some from my account, but Melanie was really low, so we went fertility treatment and that there, but it was a tablet called Clomid and that there, which it wasn't really good for Melanie's mental health. Doesn't mind me saying this here, but it actually made her a wee bit spaced out, do-dally, you know, sort of thing, because it was like that intense and that there. So as we said, look, we hate to come off that there. She still had 2 bouts that to take or something, I think it was, and we just said, no, that's not worth it. So, but because we had Corey, we couldn't go for IVF on the NHS, and it was too expensive to go for it privately. So we sort of kind of getting up hoping that there, but at the same time, I was sort of in chats with my dad a wee bit about biblical stuff and that there. He used to be very, very versed before strokes and that there. He was a real proper God-fearing man and that there. And we used to get into wee chats and discussions and that, but I was always trying to disprove him, trying to like pick holes in his argument and that there, but he was that well versed. He's too good for me at that time, so he was. And just started to say a couple of wee things that just started to like in there about like, well, what happens, Melanie and Corey, if you didn't make the decision and things like that there. And then because I wasn't being selfish anymore, I started to actually think about that there. And then Melanie's mum had been diagnosed with dementia, and her granny had passed away and that there. So we were just going through the ringer at the time, trying to get pregnant and that. And it was just a tough time and that there. And I was working in Sega Healthcare in Ballymoney at the time, but whenever my granny passed away, I got a wee Bible that we began her in 1984, and I got it as sort of like part of the inheritance and that there, and started to take it to work with me. And instead of sitting with everybody at lunchtime, I just went to the car, started to read the Bible, started to pray and that there, and then that's saying to Melanie, it's funny that the two portions of scripture at that time that really stuck out to me and have been touched on a lot this week was John 1 and verse 5, which is still my favourite verse in the Bible. I like the King James Version, that the light shone in the darkness, darkness could not comprehend it. And then Isaiah 53, he's wounded for our transgressions and bruised for our iniquity. And them are the two that really sort of stuck with me in that time. And then the discussions with my dad got more and more, and then I started praying, and I just said, you know what, I'm going to give this prayer thing a proper go. And I dropped to my knees one day in the kitchen, and I prayed for another child. And lo and behold, a few months later, we found out the wee miracle, because we were told we couldn't have any more unless IVF was the only option, and then the wee miracle there was born in 2016. So, and then out of that, then Melanie's mum started to go downhill more and more and more, their dementia and that. And, but so blessed that she got to meet, well, she knew Corey for all them years, and then she got to meet Finlay as well. But in 2018, she passed away in January in 2018, and it was actually on her way to one of the days of her wake. Me and Melanie, the first time we'd even started to discuss it, we just sort of looked at each other at the same time. My mum and dad had always been badgering me about going to church with them, and we just sort of turned and looked at each other and said, why not try this Sunday? I went, right, okay, we'll try this Sunday. And then I think it was the next day or a couple of days later, Corey came to us and says, my friends have been badgering me at school. He says, they're telling me to go to church. And then he says, so I'm thinking of going this Sunday. So that's, well, okay, I'm going to go this Sunday. So we ended up going to church. And then a few weeks later, I gave my life to the Lord. And then a few months later, Melanie and Corey. And then we all got baptized together as well, which was nice. And so God's hand has always been in our life. Like, it's only new that we can sort of look back and say, you know, pick it, oh, well, it was big there, and not there. So it was brilliant. Like, so.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't it? It's amazing how God is just so good. For people in the room who maybe feel too far gone, or someone listening online and says, I hear that could never be me, what would you say?
It's a wee quote that I was given a good few years ago, and it stuck with me. I love it. It's like, if anybody, obviously self-worth's a big thing, especially if anybody that suffers from any sort of mental disorder and that there, and it's all about acceptance and that there, but just think how valuable you are when the devil pursues you at every opportunity, every minute, every day, but that the Lord of the universe would lay down his life for you.
It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. When you look back in your life then, Ian, there's so many things that you could look back upon. Where are the moments that you can just see the hand of God being so faithful upon? The moments of, you said you were in the darkness, or you heard sort of the voice in your head. Where's even them moments you can just see, here, God, you were always working?
How graphic can I go? There's a few. There's a few big ones. So I'll start with the graphic one, because then it gets better than that there. So there was one night, a fellow pulled a machete on my brother, Tweed's Alley. A lot of people think this sort of stuff doesn't go on in Ballymoney, but it actually does. There's actually a dark side to Ballymoney a lot of people don't really know about. But this, down at Matheson Corner, he was with his mate and that there, and this fellow pulled a machete, two brothers. And I'm threatened, because they didn't like me anyway, me and him had a couple of run-ins, you know, and then so he threatened the brother instead, because he couldn't get at me. And so the brother came up and told us this here, and so we went on the hunt for him. And we actually got them at the back of Vivo, if everyone knows where Vivo is in Ballymoney. But I caught the brother, not the one that I really wanted, but I caught the brother, so I started to wheel him a wee bit, you know. And then somebody shouts, we got him, which was the other one, the one that actually pulled the machete or the knife or whatever it was. So I ran up, and he was standing, and I creamed him, like, do you know what I mean? Just hit him, and he fell. And he just fell perfectly, sort of at the curb with his head. And I had these big boots on and that, and I just started to, like, jump on his head. So I did, sorry for the graphics, but this is what it was. And just the thoughts in killing him, I didn't care about the consequences, that's all I could think about at that time. And it was a certain person that actually came around the corner in a car and grabbed me and put me in the car. And he says, he never would have drove that way ever in his life. I don't know why he drove that way that night. Well, we do know why he drove that way that night, but he drove around that corner and he says, you in the car. He says, before you kill that man. And that was the first real one that I know about. Then obviously how I met Melanie, that was a major one. Finlay and Corey, obviously two big blessings in her life. And then, I'm being honest here, my dad's face when he had his first stroke. That's how I knew God was real, because that man, you just seen it in his face, you know, I just knew that day he was being wheeled the ambulance and that there. I'm watching him in the hospital bed, I just knew God's hand was upon him, so and then he's a testament sitting there, you know, it's three major strokes, and a lot of mini strokes and that there, and he's still, although he's brain damaged, but he's still a blessing in our life and that there. And then, as I say, my security blanket there, that she's the one that calms me. She's just the biggest blessing in my life, along with the kids and that there, Melanie. So those are the major ones. So they were. And that's just, you just know. And whenever things like that happen to you in life, you can't really doubt it. So,
I think you said something when you said at the moment that you were sitting on the stairs, almost like the sit of shame. It's the first time, the language you used was, it's the first time I heard God. It wasn't that he wasn't speaking, it was that you heard him. Yeah. And there's a song, I think it's called Waymaker, says, even when I don't feel it, you're working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Yeah. And the reality is that the Lord is always working. He's always at work in people's lives. It's just us who sometimes can't hear it and see it. But there's this.
Sometimes it has to work a bit harder for me, but anyway, so.
Yeah. But it's now these moments, isn't it, that's beautiful, that you look back upon your life. And even though there's moments of regret and decisions that you would take back if you could, you still see the hand of God right throughout all of it. He's that kind and he's that gracious and he's that good. And here, sitting here today, last question. Following Jesus isn't the easiest life in the world. Is there some things you still find difficult, but at the core of it, do you still think it's the greatest decision you've ever made in your life?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. But it's, as I say, that we quote about the devil pursues you every day, and then because of the way I'm sort of wired and made up, my temper's not the greatest still at times, especially at work, and maybe if Graham's in, he'll be able to testify about our place at the minute, so a bit difficult sometimes to work, and then I never shirt for a fight, you know, never shirt for an argument and that there, so I'm the one that the boys look to sort of go in, but sometimes then that, I didn't maybe carry myself in the best of way, but as I say, I knew there just wasn't the right wiring in my head at times, so I got speaking to a mate of mine who's actually a mental health nurse and that, and started to discuss ADHD and that. She says, I think you have it. You get diagnosed with it and that there, and I said, how long does it take? She says 6 years, and I was like, do you know what, I'll just go pump my full medicine, I'll just take your word that I probably hate and that, and that's what I say, I call Melanie my wee elf now, because I could be standing, and she's always turning off hobs around the house and that, so I didn't burn the house down and that, or I could be standing cooking, then I'm watching football, and she'll like, oh, the dinner's on, and I'll like, oh, but so she's my wee elf, but so just the way I'm wired and that there, sometimes I didn't hold myself right, but I was speaking to Joanne about this earlier on and a couple yesterday. Found magnesium. So anybody that's suffering from any sort of mental voices or that, magnesium just sort of levels you out and quietens them voices and that. And then so I'm just been myself the last 3-4 weeks, and I've been pretty male, and hopefully testify for this. I've been a lot calmer, and even at work I've been a lot calmer and that. So
and you even said yes to this, so it must be
working. You probably asked me at the right time, because if you asked me about 7 weeks ago, probably would have said no, but anyway. But I know we're here, and I suppose we're through it now. So.
Nearly, yes. Here, one last thing. For people in the room who've never decided to follow Jesus, or maybe people in the room who did follow Jesus at a stage and maybe lost their way, or people listening online, what bit of advice would you give them?
Don't overcomplicate it. Don't overcomplicate. I think the church has, the modern church, has overcomplicated things and made it like this. You can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, where it's not like that. We're all broken. Jesus has paid the price, so we didn't hate them, and I'll wait days accept them. And so didn't overcomplicate it, as I say. Just realise how special you are, and you didn't always have to seek approval for your friends. You know, the only one you need to seek approval for is the Lord. And so didn't let your friends influence your life to. Because it's a big, massive roundabout I had to go on to get to where I'm at now. So, you know what, I got done that route. So, and you had a good teacher here and good youth set up here. So, any young ones didn't get involved in any garbage. Just head down and batter on.
Brilliant. Give it up for Ian, guys. Thank you so much.